All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and our latest BCBA mock exam, where we're going through the next set of questions together and breaking each question down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. As always, check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack and other practice exams. As always, when you pass, please let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. 55. Dwight quits his job at the paper company after he is accused of going behind his boss's back. The other salesmen at the company must now take on Dwight's clients. As they are going through Dwight's files, they start to realize that Dwight had complex organization systems in place for each of his clients and that they are unlikely to be able to figure out the systems on their own. What dimensions or assumption is missing from Dwight's system based on this information? So when you deal with dimension questions or 7 dimensions or assumptions of science, you've got to be very particular about what the question is alluding to, because a lot of our dimensions and a lot of our assumptions have crossover and they kind of commingle, right? But in most cases, they're going to ask for one specific dimension or one specific assumption. And so you've got to read very, very carefully and really understand what is the question trying to convey to you? Because the questions are going to be in these applied settings, right? And so you're going to have to take your knowledge of the ABA terms and the dimensions and the assumptions and apply them to more real life situations that might not be directly related to behavior analysis. In this case, you have Dwight, who quit his job. And so now salesmen must come and take Dwight's clients. Well, the comparison here is if you leave your job as a BCBA, other BCBAs have to come behind you and try to take on your clients. And so as they go through Dwight's files, they realize it's very complex and they're not going to be able to figure out the systems on their own. So what is the issue here? What is the problem? Well, these new salesmen can't duplicate or replicate what Dwight was doing. So what dimension or assumption is related to duplication or replication? A, parsimony. Parsimony says we take the simplest explanation. Since we're not offering explanations here, since no one's asking for explanations, we're simply looking at the salesmen and their ability to imitate or duplicate Dwight's systems. We're not talking necessarily about parsimony here. What we're really looking at is the technological aspect of Dwight's systems. And again, to make the comparison, this is you as a BCBA. When you're writing treatment plans and behavior plans, you need to write them in a way that another trained individual or another knowledgeable individual could replicate it. That's what the technological aspect is. Because in the end, we're creating these technologies, the behavior change technologies, that other people should be able to duplicate and use. So if they can't, we're lacking that technological aspect. C, conceptually systematic. Well, that directly relates to ABA behavioral terminology. We're not sure what Dwight's system is built on, so we can't make that assumption. And then D, analytic. Analytic says there's a functional relationship. We don't mention functional relationships here. There are no dependent variables, independent variables. There's no experimental control going on. So analytic doesn't really fit. The dimension that fits the best is going to be technological, because these complex systems, the other salesmen aren't able to duplicate. It's just like if you have a treatment plan that other BCBAs can't duplicate or replicate, you lack the technological dimension. 56. Jason experiences 2 different types of seizures on a daily basis. These seizures can be quite intense and often impact service delivery. Frequently, after a seizure, Jason will regress on previously mastered targets. Jason's parents informs the behavior analyst that Jason experiences extreme fatigue following the seizures. Fatigue is considered what? Now, when you think fatigue, you have to ask yourself, what is the observability of it? What is the measurability of it? Is it objective? And it's really not. Fatigue means a bunch of different things to pretty much a bunch of different people, right? It's not reliably observable. It's not reliably measurable, and it can be very subjective. And so when we talk about these states of beings, right? Fatigue is this state of being. What are we referring to here? Well, we're referring to some type of mentalism. Jason's parents say, oh, Jason experiences extreme fatigue. Now, you've got to be careful when dealing with mentalisms. All right. So if we look at this, it's either going to be a hypothetical construct or an explanatory fiction. And so the difference is the hypothetical construct is the term or the idea. So fatigue is a construct. The explanatory fiction is if you start attributing behavior to the construct. So if parents said Jason regresses because of fatigue, that's an explanatory fiction. But they didn't say that. All they said was Jason experiences fatigue. So at this point, fatigue is simply just a hypothetical construct. Understand the difference there. It's a construct until you start explaining behavior with it, explaining it as the cause, which we haven't done yet. They just simply said Jason experiences fatigue. Circular reasoning is when you bring it full circle, right? Jason regresses because he's fatigued. Well, since he's fatigued, he's going to regress. That's circular reasoning. We haven't gotten to that point yet. And a public event. Fatigue is not a public event. Fatigue is not reliably observable. It's not reliably measurable. I could be fatigued and no one else could know. How are you going to measure my fatigue? So following seizures, Jason is fatigued. His parents say he's fatigued. That is a hypothetical construct. As I teach my class, I read from the slides that I created that morning. As I am reading from the slides, Joanne is vigorously taking notes on her laptop. She will also occasionally raise her hand and ask a question. What verbal operants are represented in this scenario? All right, a different look at verbal operants. We've got a scenario with multiple operants going on at once. Remember, with verbal behavior, you've got a speaker and a listener. And so on verbal behavior questions, you need to identify speakers, listeners, and what behavior the question is asking about. In this case, they want to know all the verbal operants, right? So let's start with sentence one. Remember, read the question, understand the question. We never jump right to the answer choices, not until you understand the question fully. So as I teach my class, I read from the slides that I created that morning. So I'm reading. What operant does reading relate to? Well, that's a textual. So if we look at our answer choices, we all have textual, so we can't eliminate anything. As I'm reading from the slides, Joanne is taking notes. So what is Joanne doing? Well, she's writing down what I'm saying. She's transcribing. That's transcription. So A, B, and C have textual and transcription. D does not. Then she will occasionally raise her hand and ask a question. So what is Joanne doing there? She's seeking information, right? For some reason, she needs information. She's making a request for information. So when you make a request, what do we call that? Well, it's obviously a mand. So we have a textual, reading, transcription, taking notes, and a mand, asking for information. So we have textual transcription, A is out. Textual transcription, mand, B looks good. Textual transcription, interverbal, no. Textual, interverbal, mand, no. We need a textual, a transcription, and a mand, right? And so when you start to break it down like that, okay, sentence by sentence, step by step, you're really understanding what the question is asking. All your work needs to be done in the question, and you don't go to the choices until you truly understand what is the question saying and what information is the question providing me. 58. Jason got caught sneaking out of his house last Friday night. On Saturday, his dad made Jason stay home and gave him a list of chores to do, including mowing the lawn, weeding the garden, and cleaning the pool. Jason's dad told him he better have everything done by the time he gets home from work. How will Jason's dad measure Jason's behavior? Now, I think this is a pretty straightforward question, pretty easy measurement questions. And I always remind everybody that not every question on the BCBA exam is going to be the hardest question you've ever seen, right? There's a lot of questions, and when you get the easy questions, just consider it a blessing, right? Or lucky. Trust your preparation, trust your knowledge, answer it, move on. The worst thing you can do with an easy question is overthink it and start the question, why does this seem so easy? You have to trust your preparation. So, simply, Jason got caught sneaking out. On Saturday, Jason's dad gave him a list of chores: mow the lawn, weed the garden, clean the pool. Jason's dad told him he better have everything done by the time he gets home from work. So what do we know? We know Jason's dad is not going to be there observing Jason mowing the lawn, weeding the garden, and cleaning the pool. And yet Jason's dad still needs to measure Jason's behavior. How is he possibly going to do that? A, event recording. Well, event recording is more or less frequency recording during an FBA, right? Because we're just recording whenever an event happens, whenever a response happens. Jason's dad isn't there to do that. And event recording is not going to let us know, is the lawn mowed, is the garden weeded, is the pool cleaned? What we want to know here is the outcome, the product of these behaviors. B, ABC narrative recording. ABC narrative recording, we're looking at antecedents, behaviors, and consequences and narrating them, right, essentially, as they're occurring in our data collection. Again, Jason's dad isn't there, so we can't do ABC narrative recording, and it doesn't help us. We need to know the outcome or the product of the list of chores. C, play check. Planned activity check has nothing to do with this. 1, play check is a group measurement. 2, it's momentary time sampling. 3, Jason's dad, again, is not there. So the only one that's going to work is going to be D, permanent product. Jason's dad isn't there, and so all he can do is measure the product or the outcome of Jason's behavior. And this is one of the advantages of permanent product. Sometimes you want to measure the outcome. You're not too concerned about how the learner got there, right? You're just more concerned with the product or the outcome. So Jason's dad is likely going to measure Jason's behavior using permanent product. 59, an undergraduate student is interested in attending law school, but first she must take the law school admissions test. She hires a tutor who tells her she must study at least 2 hours a day or she will fail the exam. The undergraduate student studies at least 3 hours a day instead. What type of behavior does the undergraduate student's behavior represent? So whose behavior are we looking at? Start there. The undergraduate students. And what is the undergraduate student doing? Well, she's studying 3 hours a day, every day. So her behavior is obviously maintaining and it's continuing. But why? You have to ask yourself, but why? What caused the behavior change? Well, she wants to take this test. The tutor says, you have to study at least 2 hours a day or you will fail the exam. So what's the contingency here? If you don't study 2 hours a day, you will fail the exam. That's the contingency. Has the undergraduate student failed yet? No. And yet, her behavior changed. So even though she hasn't come in contact with the contingency, her behavior still changed. Why is that? What do we consider that? Is it A, reinforcement shaped behavior? Well, no, she hasn't come in contact with the consequence. All that has occurred is the tutor basically stated the rule, right? You have to study at least 2 hours a day or you're going to fail the exam. So even though she hasn't failed the exam, she hasn't been reinforced or punished, her behavior changed. And why? Well, because of the rule. This is B, rule-governed behavior. Rule-governed behavior is when behavior changes from a verbal statement that is stating the behavior and the contingency and the consequence, which is what is occurring here. If she meets a consequence, right? Let's say she does study at least 2 hours a day and then she passes. Now we've got contingency shaped behavior. She hasn't engaged in the contingency yet. It's still rule governed. So typically you're going to call it rule governed, right? Or contingency shaped, but you can break it out to reinforcement or punishment shaped if you like. But here it doesn't matter regardless because it's going to be rule governed. She hasn't come into contact with reinforcement or punishment. All she knows is the rule that states the contingency. And so her behavior changes because of this verbal statement. Therefore, it is rule governed. Marcus places a 3 of diamonds, a 5 of hearts, and an ace of spades on the table in front of his student. He tells his student that the 3 of diamonds is equivalent to the 5 of hearts, and whenever a 5 of hearts is played, that is worth the 3 of diamonds. Marcus also says the 5 of hearts and ace of spades are of equal value. How would transitivity best be represented given this information? All right, stimulus equivalence. I don't recommend diagramming a lot of things on the exam, okay? Stimulus equivalence, I would recommend diagramming. I would write letters, right? A, B, C, over each stimulus. It's going to make things a lot easier. So let's say our 3 of diamonds is our A, 5 of hearts is our B, ace of spades is our C. Marcus tells the student the 3 of diamonds is equal to the 5 of hearts. So A equals B. Whenever 5 of hearts is played, that is worth 3 of diamonds. B equals A. Okay, easy enough, right? But what we're looking for is transitivity. So transitivity is when we derive a relation that is untaught. Untaught's the key. You can't teach a relationship and have it be transitivity. It has to be derived. It has to be untaught. So Marcus also says the 5 of hearts, B, and ace of spades, C, are equal. So what do we know so far? A equals B, B equals A, B equals C. Transitivity is A equals C. So our answer choice has to reflect some sort of untaught relationship between 3 of diamonds and ace of spades. So A, if another 3 of diamonds is presented, the student matches the 5 of hearts to it. Well, no, we already know that's reflected here, right? That is not our transitivity. B, if Marcus tells the student the 3 of diamonds is equivalent to the ace of spades and the student treats them as equal. What's the issue there? Well, he taught it. Transitivity is derived. It's untaught. It cannot be transitivity when it's taught. C, if the student matches the 3 of diamonds to the ace of spades without further instruction. Yes. C, we now have A equals B, B equals C, therefore A equals C without further instruction. C is exactly what we are looking for. D, transitivity is already represented in the scenario. No, symmetry looks to be represented. Reflexivity, we're not sure, but is likely, right? Transitivity is not yet represented. However, if the student matches the 3 of diamonds to the ace of spades without further instruction, then transitivity will be represented. 61. Bobby is now old enough to stay at home by himself. His parents show him how to lock the front door and set the alarm. When his parents leave, Bobby locks the front door and the door to his room, which has a different type of lock. Locking doors represents what? All right. So we're looking at the behavior of locking doors. Bobby stays at home and he knows how to lock the front door. So his parents say, here's how you lock the front door. So when his parents leave, he locks the front door, engages in the response, and the door to his room, which have different types of locks. Interesting. So is Bobby's response changing? No, he's still locking the door. What's changing? Well, the stimulus. And so when you have a single response, in this case, locking the door, which is generalizing across different stimuli, what do we call that? A, response generalization. Response generalization is when new responses occur in the presence of a single stimulus. So if a different response occurred in the presence of the front door lock, that will be response generalization. That's not what's occurring here. Same response is occurring across multiple stimuli. He is generalizing across stimuli. He locking doors is now representing stimulus generalization. It isn't necessarily stimulus discrimination, right? Because he's just going to the different locks and locking them. And it isn't response differentiation because it's a single response. Response differentiation is when multiple responses occur, right? And we're choosing between these different responses. All he's doing is generalizing across the locks. It is stimulus generalization. And then 62, Jolene is sensitive to loud noises. As part of her therapy, her therapist wants to help Jolene react less intensely when in the presence of a loud noise. The therapist will turn on loud music or a blender, and only if Jolene asks for the noise to go away will the therapist stop the noise. What intervention does this most resemble? Okay, so let's break this down, right? We're looking at the intervention. Jolene's sensitive to loud noises. Therapist wants her to react less intensely. What is the therapist doing? She turns on loud music or a blender. Only if Jolene asks for the noise to go away will the therapist stop the noise. So that's a little confusing, right? She wants her to react less intensely. But what's the replacement behavior? The replacement behavior is asking for the noise to go away. So she is teaching a replacement behavior. So if we're teaching a replacement behavior, what can we eliminate? We can eliminate DRO. DRO doesn't teach a replacement. And then we can eliminate DRL. DRL is not teaching a replacement. DRL is just lowering a certain response. DRO, DRL, DRD, DRH, gone, because we're teaching a replacement. That leaves us with DRI and DRA. And DRI and DRA teach replacements, and the only difference between the two is with the DRI, the replacement behavior is incompatible with the old behavior. DRA, it's not. So, can Jolene ask for the noise to go away and engage in the replacement behavior and at the same time react intensely? Absolutely, right? Those are not incompatible. And so the therapist is not teaching an incompatible behavior. What is she teaching? Well, she's teaching an alternative behavior. So what intervention does this most resemble? Well, differential reinforcement of alternative behavior. Differential reinforcement is something you just got to have down pat, right? You need to know all of them inside and out, okay? It is one of our core ways of changing behavior. You got to understand which ones teaches replacements, which ones do not teach replacements, right? And DROs, DRLs don't teach replacements. DRIs, DRAs do. What's the difference between DRIs and DRAs? All this stuff really makes a difference, right, when evaluating questions like this. And then 63, mass practice and applied behavior analysis treatment is most commonly tied to what other intervention? So I've used this question before, but I think it's a good refresher, okay? Remember, repetition and fluency is a good thing, right? And so mass practice is commonly tied to what other intervention? What is mass practice tied to? A, negative reinforcement contingencies. Well, no, mass practice is when we engage in the wrong response over and over again. It's essentially a type of self-punishment. Mass practice is tied to self-management. Mass practice is the opposite of positive practice because mass practice is more akin to negative practice. So almost a fluency question, but I think it's an important one because you've got to understand the difference between positive practice, negative practice, and massed practice, okay? And so if you remember massed practice as part of self-management, that's going to go a long way on the exam if you get these type of questions. So mass practice and ABA treatment is most commonly tied to self-management. Excellent. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe so you get all our video updates. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com. Link is in the comments below. Let us know when you pass so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.